First of all, I want to welcome all of you. It's great. We have it's not clear how many people are on yet, but we've got something like 45 people who have signed up for this particular call. And we're very excited about it. It encompasses 7 countries, although the United Kingdom might not like that we've divided Scotland into its own country. So we'll say 6 or 7 countries.
It's a good thing. It's a good thing.
Yeah. We don't want to get into domestic politics here. This is about creating a golden civilization. We're very excited to have this group. We've got something like 3 provinces in Canada, 12 to 15 states in America represented. So thank you for this. The Golden Civilization here, for those of you who haven't seen it, this is what the book will look like. This is a proof of the book, and it is proof that the book is coming. So we're very excited about it. It will be, as you know, it will be available on March 4th on Amazon. And one of the purposes of this meeting and these conversations, one of the purposes, is to give the book a place to arrive that gives it the possibility of a larger audience, perhaps. But what we realized as we were designing this work was that the notion of a golden civilization conversation had more possibilities and more feel in terms of what recognizing, as many of us do, that that civilization feels in a challenging place to many people in the world, and certainly many people in America, many people in Europe, but all over the world. And the notion was that maybe we could actually do something, the book being merely a resource, but maybe we could do something by having each of us be participants in conversations that made participative democracy real and substantial and something that could make a difference in the world. So, and we've been lucky enough to have done somewhere between 10 and 20 of them. I'm looking at Mary Zimmerman on my screen. She's going to talk in a moment about her experience. Hi there, Mary. And Frankie Corrado and Julian Pao, all of whom have held conversations. I've been involved in 10 or 12 of the conversations myself, and including ongoing conversations. So we'll talk about the structure of those conversations. But the notion was that these conversations, that often it feels that we know what we want, and we want a world that is kind and is vigorous and vital, and with lots of freedom, a world that cares, where we care for each other and we care for the planet, the home base that we have here. And those commonalities are much, much greater than our differences, and the kindness that we feel from each other in our days, much, much greater than the reports of challenging places in the world. And so the thought was that if we got together and started with a common vision, a vision just as we do in life planning. And the notion here, the great notion, and Louis and I have talked about this, the great notion of life planning civilization, of actually using the model that we have in life planning to take on civilization and to take it on in groups that are relevant in their own environment all over the world. So little pockets of participative democracy spreading all over the world. We thought, what a wonderful thing. And couldn't we, in fact, if the vision is powerful, as we say in the 5-day, what could possibly stand in our way? What could possibly stand in our way? So that notion felt so possible, so palpable, and so strong that we've begun this, this movement to have conversations. And we now have commitments, it looks like somewhere between 12 and 20 commitments. And you can see them on the map on the website, which we'll take you to in a moment, including as far afield as Australia and India. And we have, I think people are anticipating watching this from India. We have several people who will be watching this. I don't know if the timing works for them for live right now, but they'll be watching this and are anticipating giving conversations right now in the Mumbai area. So who is involved in these conversations? We want everybody to be involved. We would love this to spread. And so we're trying to create conversations that have the possibility of spreading. So inside those conversations, we will ask people to come back, and leaders may change, facilitators may change in the conversations, but also would people like to set up their own? And they can be as small as half a dozen people over a kitchen table. So it's a wonderful model for spreading. And we'll share more how the conversations work and how they might have an impact after we get some testimonials from Mary and Frankie and Julian. I'm looking at some notes over here, which is why I'm not facing directly at you occasionally. Laura has me right on task here, so I'll be following her outline. Thank you, Laura. So who is involved? What's interesting is that we thought, right now, everybody on the call has some experience with Evoke. There's one or two of you that have just been clients, one or two of you that have just taken a few of the programs, but most of you are registered life planners. And we thought, who better to facilitate conversations, life planning civilization, than registered life planners? So that's kind of the base. Kathy, sitting behind me, has a group of facilitators, has taught a group of facilitators of leadership skills all over the world. And we're going to be reaching out to that community over the next few months. I have a group of meditators that I'm reaching out to right now. And so there are other groups we're reaching out to. I'm in Hana, Maui, and we're going to be reaching out to communities here in Hawaii. So there are lots of other groups that we're starting to populate. But the basic group and the structure is an Evoke structure. And who could be better at this than registered life planners? And what a great thing to do. We spread freedom to our clients in every delivery of every session that we give. Why not have a focus? I mean, wouldn't it strengthen our capacity to do life planning, to make sure that those freedoms, that the freedoms of the planet are actually sustained and created and participated in a joyous way, in the same way we find the energy in a life planning meeting. So the participants would come from they could come from anywhere. They can come from church groups, they can come from civic organizations that you belong to, clubs you belong to. They could be just family and friends. And that the first group that I got together were 8 people. 4 of them were real friends, and 4 of them were on my staff, Kindred Suit staff. And we had a marvelous time. And so they can come really from anywhere and can be held in almost any environment. We'll discuss in a moment an ideal environment for it. How do you get involved? Well, send people to the website, because the website that Caitlin and Laura are going to run us through in a few minutes is beginning to flesh out and give a structure, a script for what a golden civilization conversation looks like at the beginning. The truth is that most of you could do it almost in your sleep, because it runs by the model of E, V, and O, and then K and E. So we'll go through that again in a moment and look at how that works. It's quite quite marvelous. We are launching this March 4th. It's a great date because it's the one date, Laura has reminded me, it's the one date that's a command, March 4th. All right. So it's saying, it's time to create participative democracy everywhere. But the notion is that this is, we want to begin then, and we wanted to have this long lead up so we could actually begin something that might feel like a movement happening throughout the spring. But for this to work, it will mean that it will happen not once, but many times. And will happen, what I've found is that when I do follow-up meetings, they're much more engaged because the vision's there. The vision can be kumbaya, it's a lot of good feeling, and we could all be singing songs around the campfire. But then the next meetings have that same spirit of excitement and warmth, but are beginning to take action. Even in the first meeting, we drive toward action, and that's one of the exciting things about this. We try to have EVOKE in all meetings so that there's action coming out that's inspirational. So we're anticipating this happening vigorously throughout the spring, and our hope is that it just continues to happen, that we build something, because we find, most of us find that our politicians aren't really representing us. And if we could have a group that is seated and is happening everywhere, that knows that there's a common vision amongst us, and then is working on action, from action internally on just being a kinder person or being more engaged with neighbors and community, to actually taking action that it will be helpful in the economic sphere, in the political sphere, in the leadership sphere. How marvelous, how great is that? Whether it's individual action or group action. And one of the things that I've realized is that we've gained so much leisure. I mean, many people feel, they're working 2 jobs and all of that, but so many of us certainly have so much leisure in our lives so much freedom in our lives compared to our great-grandparents. We owe a lot of that to the freedoms that democracy and civilization have given to us. And so when we feel that they're challenged, in a way, don't we owe it back? Isn't democracy meant to be not merely a vote, and particularly not when a vote could be bought or organized by hierarchies of power of media and all the rest? Shouldn't it be that we take part and do something? So I'm viewing it as a wonderful kind of, it's just a small element of my life, but a really important element to make a difference and to step up to the plate and say, yeah, civilization matters. Democracy matters. The earth matters. Let's do something and celebrate as we do it. So this is, we're anticipating this happen. Right now we have, I think, 7 countries where there have been maybe 8 countries that have made, where we have someone hosting a conversation. We're anticipating, well, life planning is in 30 countries. The life planning that we've done, the 7 stages work, is in 30 countries. The Evoke work is close to 30 countries. So we're going to be looking at all of those countries. We're going to be trying to reach out. We are reaching out to all of those countries. So we're anticipating this happening everywhere. And again, over kitchen tables, in offices, in conference rooms. People are talking, Mary inspired me talking about taking it to the elders in senior centers and retirement centers. Louis talked about taking it into corporations, and he's begun to have those conversations in large corporate settings. I'm really interested in taking it into meditation centers and spiritual centers and churches, universities, and certainly every neighborhood that we participate in is ripe for this. Is there a question or two before we move on to the testimonials? I think we've got time for a question or two if someone pops in with something about this piece of it, and then you'll hear about how these have worked for three people in particular. Anybody?
George?
Yes.
I may have missed stuff, but I'm just wondering, is this going to be something that you'll teach alongside Evoke as a sort of another program, or I'm not sure quite how this is going to be taught?
Yes. Well, that's a very good question. And is this Stuart? I'm looking for you on my.
Yes, yeah, it is Stuart. Yeah.
Yeah, I recognize your voice. So, so the it is. Oh, hi, Stuart. I see you now. It's not something that we're designing for profit. It is something that we're developing, and I'll be teaching through virtual life planning masteries, through Zoom calls, through Bright Talks, through webinars. We're designing manuals for it. The book, is going to describe elements of it. And I'm going around, I mean, Mary and I, and Randy, I think Randy Gardner's in this conversation, are going to be at an event or series of events in California. And every event is a teaching opportunity. We were just Joss, I see Joss on the call, and Joss and I and Julian and others were just at an event, Louis and Anita. Anita wasn't there, in England, and we were teaching different elements of it. So yes, we will be teaching it, and most of the time for free. Sometimes there will be elements where we feel we're going to charge because there are many things that this will help you do with Evoke in a group setting anyway. So materials are developing, marketing materials, all of this. Did that answer your question?
Yeah, I think so. I didn't know whether it was going to be, you have the 5-day, the 7-day, and whether you then have something on Golden Civilization. What I'm understanding is that it's going to be part of all of your teaching, sort of like a different way of looking at things, perhaps, or a new way of looking at things.
Yeah, and it's voluntary, Stuart. It's not part of you. It's not required to be an RLP. It's voluntary, and that I think that feels like the right way to do it. And the way we think of it, I mean, we think of it as a leadership opportunity for people who are registered life planners, because it puts you in a leadership capacity out in the world, and with all of your life planning skills showing, all of your facilitation skills showing to the world. So we feel that that's an add-on, but the purpose is not for that. The purpose is to really make a difference in civilization. Yeah, great. Okay. Cool. Very good. So I think we're ready for testimonials, and Julian, with your the question about will you have a good link or not from where you are. I don't know whether you should go first or last. How would you like to do this? Have we lost Julian?
Hello, George. I'm up for any invitation you make.
All right. Yes, I can hear you. I think we'll do yours last, because you probably learned a lot from hearing Mary and Frankie earlier. So why don't we start with Frankie? And I will say that for those of you just joining us in these conversations, this has been an ongoing group for a few months now, where we've been really working and developing these ideas. And Frankie was, I don't know if he was the very first to volunteer outside of myself, but I think he was, or it might have been Mary. But anyway, they were early, and they taught us a lot. And Frankie, would you like to share something of your experience?
Yes, absolutely. Thank you, George. Yeah, I was one of the earlier ones to give this a crack, and much like I learned, I'd say one of the biggest things that was helpful for me going through it was, a core component of what I learned in Evoke, which was really just about the inner listening with myself. And just, to give some background, I invited 10 colleagues and friends to my home. And so that on a Sunday afternoon in the fall, and they, as the day arrived and we got ready for people to come, I definitely felt a sense of nervousness in my chest, mainly because this was really uncharted territory for me. And I think, though, just simply being with that was really, again, I can't stress enough, George, how beneficial that, just being able to feel that and be aware of that concept. I think it made for a really beneficial conversation with the rest of the group. So the group came, and I didn't really give them much of a heads up ahead of time as to what this was going to be about. I said I wanted to get a small group together to have a conversation around what a golden civilization might look like. And I kind of left it at that. And so everyone arrived with a lot of questions. And so Corey, I really tried to keep to the template that George had put together ahead of time through some of the conversations he had. And, it really called for a time constraint of about 2 hours. And so, ours, I think, for a multitude of reasons, but really a lengthy introduction as to what was going on and what I was getting involved with. Our overall conversation went almost 4 hours. And so, I like to joke that I don't think it wasn't too difficult for everyone, because I made sure to bribe them a little bit. I brought out my good Vermont beer, and so I passed that all around. So I really lubricated the conversation a little bit. But it was really special. I followed the template as much as I could, being the first conversation, this great template that George put together. And I really thought that it was special to watch. When the group first got together, people were kind of not standoffish, but they just didn't know what to expect, and they didn't know what they were getting into. And so I laid it out for them, but I thought something changed when we split off into groups, and we split people off one-on-one to really hold this conversation and have that dyad together. And it was like a bolt of electricity in the room, and people were just going, there was just so much conversation going on. It was really great to watch. I actually didn't participate in any of those. I kind of kept time and was moderating everything. And actually, a few times I tried to stop people after I said, all right, time's up, let's get back together. And I was yelled at by everyone. They wanted to continue to talk. So I let that go. I figured let's keep it flexible in the beginning. And so I thought that was a really pivotal element, is it gets people it might make them feel uncomfortable to share up front in front of a large group. They start with the dyad together, and it really did wonders. I thought was interesting was, I think by and large everyone that came had a similar political viewpoint in general, and so I found it interesting that when we started to all discuss what were the elements of a golden civilization that we really wanted to see, there was a lot of blame, casting of blame for whatever the ails were. It was the president, or it was this or that. And I really had to try to take the time to redirect the comments towards really, what Louis often talks about is what are the core elements. I think something that we're going to face, which I faced in this initial conversation, even though it was a group of friends, I think that as we expand this to the public, we will have possibly disruptive participants. I had a particularly disruptive participant in our group who was, he was a little, he just had to really question everything. He questioned everything from, the purpose of what we were doing. Are we actually going to really solve anything? I think, George, I may have told you, he even questioned the terminology of golden civilization. He didn't even like the word gold because, it connotated something that I don't know. So he was a tough guy he was a tough nut to crack. And I think that's going to be a core element, is to not allow one or two participants in these groups to really derail the broader conversation. I will say that this particular person, he did afterwards, I did encourage him to listen more. I was encouraging, because elements like empathy were coming out as part of a golden civilization. It was really beautiful. When we started to get to the core of what a golden civilization would look like, people were coming up with some really good ideas, and it was a really collaborative effort. It was really nice. And the one gentleman who was being difficult, he did say at the end that this was one of the most meaningful conversations that he's held with people in a number of years. And that touched my heart, actually, specifically because I thought, this guy's not getting anything out of it. And sure enough, it really had meant something to him. I think that it will be important to keep to the schedule, though. Going for 4 hours, I think, was definitely too long. And so I'm actually currently trying to put together another conversation to have hopefully in the next few weeks, hopefully before the year is up, if I could, to, draw upon what other people in this group have done. There's been a lot of, some of the work that Mary's done and Julian has done. I've heard already. It's been fantastic. I want to draw upon from what they've learned. Another big thing that I think that
let me just say,
was beneficial.
Just one more thing, because we're
sure. Yeah, sure. Was really challenging people to have action items after. So we talked a lot about great, the great elements of a golden civilization. And so I asked, similar to how George discusses in his own, within Evoke, is how are you going to live into that dream? And so I really put that onto each participant and challenged them to, provide for the group what's something that they would do. And I had a number of people tell me afterwards, weeks afterwards, that they were still continuing with that. So I think that was something that was a big benefit as well.
I wish we could go on and on because you've shared so many elements that are really exciting, and some of the challenges, and the challenge in particular of kind of disruptive energies and how you do it. And Julian may talk about that. We had one or two challenges in his group as well, which was a much larger group. But fabulous, really wonderful, Frankie. Thank you for sharing.
Yeah.
Would it be all right if I
My
go
pleasure.
on to Mary? Check
Please, please.
Okay, Mary. Oh, you're on mute, Mary. Let's see. You're on mute. There you go.
How are we now? Okay. Which is unusual for me to be muted in any way. But hello, everyone. It's great to see everybody and talk about these wonderful conversations that we're having. All you people from all around the world, and my life planner Clayton on the call. It's great to see him. So anyway, hi everyone. George gave us a lot of freedom when he said, go out and start these conversations. So it was fun just to see what was something coming from, my perspective in Arizona and what's going on here, how would that look? So rather than find a group like my book club or a bunco group or friends, I didn't want it so homogeneous. And so I tried to send out to a broad variety, so we have a lot of diversity in the meeting. And it turned out really pretty great that way. I don't think there were two couples, but other than that, there were a couple of acquaintances that no one really knew each other. So I liked that. I liked the age range and some of the other demographics that we had in the meeting. And interestingly, Frankie, in the invitation, I mentioned that it was going to be an apolitical conversation. And I meant to stress that when I began and forgot to. And politics did not come up. It was fascinating to me that I think people are hungry for some kind of elevated conversation. And so when you gave them an opportunity to just take a different slant on life, a different look at things and what can we do, it was really cool the way it came out. One of the things that I did, which I'm going to try and do that every time I do one of these conversations, is find a great community place to meet. And I just happened to have a friend and client who had a community room within her brand new building. And the building became part of the conversation because at our break, they were able to kind of give us a tour of what they'd done. And this was two females, one an architect, one an interior designer, with half the building for each, and then the community room in the center. But at the break, they gave us a tour of what it was like. You know, they had a fenced-in picnic area in the back for the dogs that people wanted to bring to work. They had built the structure in a prime area in downtown Phoenix in 7 weeks. So it was really very cool to bring the conversation up a little bit, because one of the things that came up that I just wanted to mention is that two people, when we did the circle of introducing ourselves at the beginning, it was very hard for them to look into the future. It was very hard for them to figure out, well, what do you mean, a golden civilization? I mean, how do we look into the future in that way? So it was so fabulous to have this example of a modern building, a new way of looking at community within a corporate setting. And so I liked that. I liked the ambiance of that, I'll say. So many good things happen. I'm trying to think. One of the things that I wanted to put out there is how to introduce George, because I introduce him differently every time I talk about him, because there's always different awards and different mantles that he's wearing. But on this one in particular, I took the Golden Civilization and the Map of Mindfulness. And with the Golden Civilization, I brought up the fact that the Seven Stages book was written in 1999, back when no one was thinking in the way that George was thinking, and that it was considered very much on the fringe at that point in time. And yet, this summer of 2018, in one of the Wall Street Journal articles on what's good for summer reading, it just so happened that the Seven Stages of Money Maturity was there, 19 years after publication. And so even though, some of the ideas that George comes up with are fabulously new ideas and different ways of thinking. And this is part of what the book, The Golden Civilization, is about. The other part of the book, the subtitle of And a Map of Mindfulness, I wanted people to know, and George, as long as I've known you, I didn't know the statistic for sure, but you mentioned it at the retreat. But I mentioned that over the last 50 years, 50 years, George has meditated an average of 3 hours per day. Over 50 years, an average of 3 hours per day. I thought that was astounding. And I think that it cemented his authority in being able to talk about mindfulness within the conversation that we were having. So that part I wanted to pick up on, George, because since you don't introduce yourself, there are different ways to do it, but that was the way I did it for our group. I did it a little differently than Frankie's Dyads, where they paired off. After the introductions, I asked them if they would write down what their ideas were about a golden civilization. And then after that, they broke out into 3 groups of 4. So we had 12 people in the group. And so it was more cafe style. Each group had a talking stick. So, the inner listening lesson there, or the listening exercise there, was that he or she who has the stick is the one that gets to talk. There was a note taker that was to report back to the group when we met as a whole. And so that was a way to do it. And it worked really, really well when we came back together. And I know, George, you're going to get into some of the details of the template, which is a little different. But one of the fun things at the end, after what a golden civilization would look like, with sticky notes, was up on the board. What qualities do we want in a golden civilization were up on the board. The final question was really, take a couple of minutes now. You've had an idea of what a golden civilization could be and how it would look. If you just write down 2 or 3 things that you could do right now toward living to this golden civilization. And gave a few minutes for that. And then around the circle at the end, what we did was have folks just give one idea for what they would do to work toward a golden civilization. And that was real special at the end. It was kind of one of those, yay, everybody was cheering everybody on for the things that they wanted to do. So I think is that a good wrap for now?
That's beautiful, Mary. Wonderful. And so many different flavors. And one of the things that I love about what Mary did, Mary has a set of skills that are, they're not necessarily unique. Well, they are unique, but she has really studied the art of conversation and does circle technology, does this work with talking sticks. She does World Cafe. And so she's brought elements of those conversations, that style, into her facilitation of a golden civilization. I think we all have much to learn from what she did and how she did it. So I love hearing it again and again, Mary. Thank you. Wonderful. And thank you for the accolade about meditation. I think it's close to 3 hours. It's somewhere between 2 and 3 hours. I figured over time, but it's close to 3. Thank you. Thank you so much.
If I'd said 10 minutes, they would have been impressed. Over 50 minutes.
All right. Wonderful. Shall we go on to Julian and see what he has to add? Julian. Let's see, you're on mute. Let's see if we can get you unmuted. Laura, can you unmute Julie? There we go.
There we go. There we go. George, colleagues. Aaron and Bruce, you joined us on the 21st of November. Lovely to see your faces. Absolute privilege to be here. George and colleagues, I'm completely in this movement. It's very important to me. We had 24 people on the 21st of November in our house, Jacqueline's in my house. And here is the torch that came out of that. And I want to share it with you. If, as a consequence of our work together, we, the human race, live in liberty with truth, freedom of expression, and justice at the core of our existence, place the health and longevity of planet Earth and all who live in it at the forefront of our attention, delight ourselves and each other with our joy, humor, optimism, and sense of fun, live in harmony and compassion, embracing difference in the spirit of empathy, tolerance, and love, explore and deepen our wisdom, self-knowledge, and creativity through vibrant dialogue, learning, science, and art, and move forward every day with a deep sense of collective endeavor, courage, vigor, and vitality. How would that be? And we had a blast in terms of the fun and imagination of all this. There were 24 people. Aaron, Bruce, you were there with me and George. It was a group of clients, friends, family. Another 25 might have come. It was generationally diverse, not ethnically diverse, but sectorally diverse. We're meeting in on the 30th of January. I'm optimistic that many of those who couldn't come will come, and that some will host Golden Civilization conversations in their communities. And let me pick out a few things backing up what Frankie and Mary have just been saying, is that what really struck me was the sense of fun, strong sense of connection and comradeship in this group. Many have said to me since that they're thinking more about their and our sense of responsibility and agency, wrestling with what George mentioned earlier about challenging a sense of powerless and impotence. And there was, and we went through the whole of Evoke in 100 minutes, there was a sense of action which was both of being type and doing type. Being things like show generosity of spirits, be less judgmental, live as if the golden civilization was here. And it was very striking to me, George and colleagues, how there's a paradox, and it's a brilliant paradox. If we look forward 1,000 generations, it actually heightens our attention to the present moment. It's extraordinary how that happens. And there was also lots of doing actions, more energy in my local charity, take this into schools, take this into my workplace. And on the back of that, I'm going to make one comment about EVO and KE, about what we did. I could offer many more, and I know you're coming to this, George. around E, to practice inner listening, mindfulness is so important, not just because it centers us, not just because it focuses us on the present moment, what's deep down inside us, but it models our presence of shining through that. On vision, we went at this really fast, and it's important to, and George, you alluded to, we had some negativity. It was more, I think, people's personal frustration in their lives. And we just kept going, framing things. So if people saying, well, I'm frustrated, well, then in our vision, we want to see positivity. Is that what we want to see? Kept going, but with respect. And the other thing I want to say about vision in a large group, as Frankie and Mary were alluding to, what we did there was we started with 5 people commenting out loud in front of the whole group. What would they like to see in a golden civilization? So that we all got the hang of it. And then we divided into small groups and heard from all small groups. So everyone had a voice. On obstacles, so important to divide between both inner and outer. And that was a really important part of the dynamic here, because we could see in our inner obstacles things like apathy, impotence, cynicism, which were to do with us, but also outer, particularly to do with poverty and inequality. And it was really important to see that dichotomy. And the last thing I want to say on K and E was we had a go at actions, and a lot came out, even after 100, just only 100 minutes. And the last points I want to make are 3 before my time is up. One is that there was a real sense of excitement being in this movement, but also through the website to connect with other groups, both who are doing golden civilization conversations, but others who are working on similar topics. Secondly, there was a strong sense of the need for outreach that, as I said, we're a reasonably diverse group, but we do come from one particular enclave to do with having reasonable wealth and privilege. And there was a lot of attention to that, about how we could get out from our enclaves to the dark side in the social media, to listen in dark places like xenophobic groups to find common ground. And the last thing I just want to underline was the sense of uplifting belief in our own agency and responsibility and optimism. I could say much more, but that's my time, I think, George. And thank you to you, Bruce, Aaron, and others.
Beautiful. Julian, articulate, wonderful, bringing up so many new points. And I really exciting to hear, and wonderful to take me back, because I was there too. And,
I hope I mentioned that, George. I hope I mentioned you there. I could say a couple of things that which we did together. I'm sorry, I did want to make it clear that you were there.
I didn't think that you left it out. But one of the things that Julian did, interestingly, because Mary, of course, was thinking how to introduce my work, and what Julian did, I was there, so he interviewed me. So the first 10 minutes were an interview, and knowing the group that's there and what might interest them, him knowing me, and of course him having his own frame of what's important. And I thought it was a beautiful beginning, and people were riveted and they wanted to talk more, and again, more about kind of my ideas and the book. But what we did, and this is what's so beautiful about this, we said, no, what's important are your ideas. Yeah. And just shifting to them. And it was just lovely how they took that in and then reflected and started sharing their own ideas. So I have, oh gosh, I could go on and on. Stuart asked me if I could train on this. I think Frankie and Mary and Julian could all train on it, and I could certainly add things to each of you. But what I'd like to do next is we'll talk about the actual structure of the conversation a bit. And I'll be sharing what you've heard. You've heard 3 examples of 3 different conversations held in 3 different ways, but with the overall frame of both the Golden Civilization and of Evoke, of EVOKE. So one of the things I wrote to Julian after our engagement together was just a summary that really all that we need in this engagement, if you choose to do one, and I hope all of you will choose to do one, and more, but all that we really need is to inspire a vision, so that the vision is there. We need to listen, first of all, inspire a vision, have enough of a sense that there are obstacles and problems out there that we will be overcoming, and then have action steps. So a successful meeting has this incredible vision, a quality of listening. At some point, that listening needs to be bounded. So the wild card that Frankie was describing, and Julian and I had one or two, but they were minor. But there is a time where you just simply say, no, we can't go there if we're going to be able to finish this. Because if you don't end with action steps, there's a sense that it's just been a lot of, the obstacles have felt like complaint again, and the vision feels beautiful, but it doesn't feel like we can really get there. So the action steps at the end are really important. So in some ways, it doesn't really matter how you do the conversation. We'll have a script. We do have a script, and we're going to add to it, and we want to add elements like the talking stick and all of that as options. And maybe Mary will give a training on how to use the World Cafe model, for instance. Or any of you could give a training after you've done experience. But so just the frame, it's very easy. We start generally with a meditation. One of the things that Ed, who wasn't able to be with us in this call, that Ed urged us early on, he said, all great movements have a spiritual basis. And so it's really important to have some inner listening to begin this. And it's also a way of helping people as you do an inner listening meditation for 5 minutes or so. It's a way of also describing to people how valuable it is for each of us to let go of our political persuasions, our arguments, our complaints, our resentments, our blames, and to really focus on listening to others with the same graciousness that we attempt to listen to ourselves in an inner listening exercise. So it's a wonderful beginning and a wonderful ground, and it's also a good way to have at least a minute at the end of just quiet back to listening again. The ideal room is it can be anywhere. I mean, it's obviously best in a circle, so we can all see each other, just as we do in so many of the trainings that we give. But if it's a larger audience, I mean, I'm going to try and do one digitally, and we're hoping we'll get hundreds, if not thousands, of people, and we'll just see how it goes. I'm sure there will be challenges, but and I could imagine 100 people, and it would be more in a conference type of setting. And I'm beginning to do those kinds of things with groups that are not necessarily in a circle. One of the ways that I did it the other day was in a 5-day, and I did it in maybe 10 or 15 minutes instead of a 2-hour meeting. And we were all, obviously, we had a common basis. And so I just called out, I said, what would be in the Golden Civilization? And they put all the things that Julian, that was a beautiful torch, by the way, absolutely gorgeous. And we'd love to have that written down so we can think about it and organize it. Sometimes, so this group of the 5-day that I had them call out, and then I didn't even write it on the board. I was just doing something quick, and I wanted it interactive. And so what I said is, just if as a consequence of our work together and the work of many other participative Golden Civilization conversations all over the world, if we were able to deliver that to you, and I didn't go through renaming them all, how would it be? And there was a big smile. Everybody was just, thrilled, excited. So you can even not stumble over, you can even just leave it. People remember that vision pretty quickly. So you get the vision, and it's wonderful. And so this is the first meeting. But before the vision, you do something like what, I mean, Julian and Mary and Frankie each described a situation where you had these dyads. If you're all very familiar with each other, it's a small family group, you don't necessarily need a dyad, you could just have people speak out. So the dyad is semi-optional, but clearly when there are people who don't know each other and might be fearful of speaking, a dyad can be a way of feeling safe. And sometimes we do it as a triad. I think Julian and I did ours as a triad. To get people to speak about why they're here and what their vision is. Let's see, I'm looking again at the, let me describe something about, so Julian speaking last was talking about coming to action steps and how exciting that was. Let me talk about those action steps in terms of a problem voice. And I'm mentioning a problem voice not because they dominate a conversation. They don't. They're a very minor piece. And many of the conversations I've had have not had a voice like that. And I think Mary was saying hers didn't have a voice like that. But when, and sometimes they're a minor thing. Someone just is bringing up something that is political and they're complaining. And one of the things that I've learned to do is on a board, on a flip chart, I will have three areas. One of them is for the golden civilization. And often I'll put that as a circle and I'll put all the different qualities in there. And one of the things that I've learned to do kind of at the end is I've thrown in, okay, so you put all these wonderful qualities of kindness and collaboration, all that. Is there any war there? And they go, no war. So I put no war up there. Is there any corruption there? And they go, no corruption. So I put no corruption there. So things that are obvious and that we know that the whole world would agree with, I'll bring up and I'll have those two words together because they're clearly very important when we image the golden civilization. So it'll be a little bit more practical, a little bit more earthy. And I've just added that, and that seems to work well. So when someone brings up something, you know, you ask them why they're here and what does golden civilization look like? When someone brings up, well, gosh, you know, the people that we have running this country, they don't have a clue and they don't listen to us, and you know, they start going into a complaint and a blame and a shame, or maybe they're blaming the other side of the spectrum. The people who want to take away our gun rights, or the people who are, you know, want to have guns, and you know, so they're blaming or something. And what I do with those complaints, let's say it's about the money in politics, what I'll do is I'll say, oh, so okay, let me just reinterpret this. So here in the vision section, I'm hearing no money in politics. No money/politics. So I'll put that in the golden vision. And and then I'll have this obstacles area, and I'll go, one of the obstacles is the structure of money in politics. So that's just right there. And the action, there might be an action, and the action might be, you know, what would you do about it? And I'd see if they have something they do about it. Anyway, I'll try and reframe something into a vision or into an obstacle and just list it quickly, rather than get lost in the conversation, or reframe something into, well, let's take action. So an action step will be doing this, making democracy participative instead. So I'll have that mindset of quickly shifting. And sometimes, and I did this once in Julian's group, because we were coming to the end and we hadn't gotten our actions out. And I knew that without getting actions, and also without hitting the time frame, we had a specific time frame. It was an evening and we needed to finish. that there would be some trouble in kind of the cleanness of the clothes. So I had to tell someone who had something really important they wanted to say, no, I'm sorry, if we're going to be able to finish the conversation, you're going to have to do that afterwards with one or all of us. So I had to actually put a boundary. And I think that's appropriate, because if you don't get to those action steps, there's a weakness and there's not a vitality, and people feel that you're not really going to make something happen. Julian mentioned an action step that I learned in my meditation community in one of the ongoing work that we did, and that was to live as if the golden civilization were here. So I'm now often using that as being one action step that we might take. And it's a very powerful action, because you're living in a place then of kindness, or you're living in a place of listening, or you're living in a place of being willing to speak, where powerful forces normally wouldn't let you speak. So, and you're also living as if the golden civilization was here means that you're also noticing every place that it is here, and you're celebrating that. You're celebrating it inside yourself, so it's a spiritual place. But you're also noticing all the places that it isn't here. And so what I do with that is I say, take those places where you see that it isn't here and jot them down and bring them in next time. And we'll work on them. There'll be some of the obstacles that we look at for next time. So so that's another way of doing this. One of the things that I've done toward the end of these sessions is we've gotten so you ask, so what could possibly get in the way, and people list the things. And then I've asked people to prioritize. To vote even. Which of these do they think is the most urgent or the most important to deal with? Sometimes I'll ask them to name their top 3, depending on the size of the group. And everybody gets a voice or a vote, and you just do it quickly, and you put X's up by or marks by the, so then you can fasten into what are the areas you want to focus on for action steps. So we had 6 to 10, and often with obstacles, I ask people not to share every obstacle they can think of. I just ask them to share the 3 biggest ones they can think of. And if someone's already spoken to 1 or 2 of them, then just share the one that's remaining. So that way you've got a limited frame that's actionable, and you don't get carried away in conversation about too many things. And then, as I say, you divvy that up. You ask people to vote. Well, which one of here is the most urgent? And those votes are going to, in my meditation community, there are a lot of educators. So education was the thing that kind of topped the list. It was more important than the political structures. So we got to focus on education and how to best benefit education. But when it finally came to action steps, we asked about action steps around that, but when it came to action steps around the group at the end, some of it was about education, some of it was around politics. We asked each person to share what they would do. Some people couldn't think of something, or were still feeling lethargic, or like they couldn't do anything of value, and that's fine, just accept that. And then others were sharing about taking additional acts of kindness, or listening better to people on the other side of the aisle, so to speak. If we get action and vision out of this, and some sense of the obstacles, we're doing a great service. That's participative democracy in action. We're really going to make a difference. And one of the things that I look for in every meeting is I look to ask who is willing to, please all come back, and we set up a meeting a couple of weeks or a month from now or a week from now, depending on the energy in the group and the willingness of the facilitator. It might be that you only want to facilitate one, and you say, well, I'd love to see this ongoing, is there someone who'd be willing to facilitate the next one? And the other thing that I'm asking now, if you're doing anything leading up to March 4th, and I think even after that, is we would love people to set up their own. It'd be wonderful if you come back, if we do this again. We'd love to have you back, but we'd love to populate this and for you to bring people into your own communities and make this happen actively in your own community. So we're building that into the structure of every conversation we have, at least an outreach in that regard. Not a hard sell, not a push, but if this is going to work, it's going to be something that moves, that grows all around the world. And ongoing groups, ongoing meetings, you start with the vision you had and asked, is anything missing? Just like you do in an Evoke meeting. You start with relighting the torch and asking, is anything new? Is anything missing that you want to add? And then you look at the obstacles and you go, looking at these obstacles, is there anything that you want to do here? And I'm just seeing a note that Clayton's saying to everyone, positive multi-level marketing. Absolutely, it's a chain letter kind of thing, but it's with a positive vision. Doesn't cost anybody anything, a really positive spirit to it. And it's something where we can have a huge impact if we do get this going all over the world, a huge impact on democracy, on civilization, and on planet Earth. To benefit all creatures, I think. So ongoing meetings are a little bit more action-oriented. I've done them in an hour. They could easily be an hour and a half to 2 hours, just like the initial meeting that we think would be best in that time frame. And always moving toward actions. We're going to have, I think Julian was mentioning the urgency of having, the importance of having a resource page, and we don't have it yet, but we're aiming in the next couple of weeks to have the development, the beginning of a really good resource page that will have two things on it. Well, three things. One is something that Laura and Caitlin are about to talk about, the resources that we've got already for you, the manual of how to do this, the script and all of that. But we also want resources of ideas, of surveys, of charts, of facts, so that when you get it into if you do get down into the details, whether it's on education or it's on violence or it's on democracy or it's on economics, that there are wonderful resources that you have at your fingertips. If you know you're going into facilitating a meeting that's going to involve certain areas, you'll have ideas at your fingertips. You'll have charts, graphs, maps, that kind of thing, if you want or feel the need to use them. You may not. But it would just, you'll feel like you've got the knowledge. This is the knowledge piece. And then the other thing we're going to have on the resource page are groups that are engaged all around the world, in your own countries, on these issues of whether it's corruption or democracy or, war and violence or Mother Earth, whatever it is, diversity. We will have groups that you can connect with as well as one of the resources. So Laura and Caitlin, is it time for you? Should I leave it now?
It is time, George. So hi, everyone. My name's Laura Woodward. I'm the Publicity and Program Manager at Kinder Institute, and I'm joined by Caitlin Como, who is our graphics design and media manager. And we're just gonna walk you through what our website looks like and some additional resources that we've been finessing. And we also open up to you to if what's missing, anything else. So if you see ideas that come to mind of things that just aren't there, this is a work in progress. And so we welcome you to send us an email or just bring it up after our short section to share your 2 cents. So Caitlin's gonna flip her screen so that we can see her, the website. Let's see. All right.
Did that work?
That did work. All right, go ahead.
I can't see you guys, so. So yeah, we absolutely invite your feedback for any elements of the website. It's definitely still an ongoing work in progress. But this is the homepage. You know, we want to start with an inspirational, motivating message. This hasn't changed much since our last video meeting, but a couple of things that we are working on changing is a stronger call to action video here. And we have developed a form. So this is all of the conversations that we have scheduled so far, and we've also mapped out some past conversations. So as more people become interested, they can just click this link right here, and that will bring them to, as soon as my web page loads, that will bring them to this form that would send us an email that has their location and a little bit of information about whoever wants to participate. So let me bring us back, and we have this about section here that brings us to our mission page and a take action section for those who are interested in hosting. So I'll walk you through those one by one. The mission page, which is our kind of snappy overview of what we're trying to accomplish with this movement. And this graphic up at the top was actually taken from our first conversation that took place at George's home. So these are some of the topics that came up there, and just trying to give people an overview of what we're trying to accomplish. From there, that brings us to the participants page. And thank you, Mary, for getting permission from everybody in your group to share their photos. So this gives a little bit of information about those who have been participating and those who are encouraging to participate. Laura and I's vision for this page over time is actually for those who are hosting conversations to submit a photo of themselves and the location. And then we can kind of highlight the people who are participating in this movement so far. But we do want it, yeah, to be pictures of people who are participating over time. To the host a conversation page, this is where we're currently starting to focus a lot of our efforts. This is where we want to direct people who are interested in hosting so that they can gather some more information just to get them started. So this here, this flyer is downloadable. People can edit the date and time and location. So if they do want to invite people who they know or potentially, you know, members of a community, they can use this as a beginning resource that'll just give a brief overview of what the event would look like. The hosting manual is something that Laura and I have been working on. And this is meant to be sort of the one-stop shop for information of how to begin hosting these conversations. It starts off with a nice little introduction from George, giving people a little more information, giving people ideas for locations to host, and kind of just letting everybody know that this is open to a variety of places. You don't need to necessarily rent out a room or have an office to go to. You know, you can go to somewhere that has public picnic tables or a colleague or a friend's living or dining room. Audiences, again, this is similar to the information on our participants page of just saying that we want everybody to be part of this. Giving an overview of the resources that we have available, including, you know, our group Facebook page that we've just started working on. And then a more detailed description of the structure of each meeting. Let's see. And I think that Laura's done a really great job here of structuring out the time so that even, of course, mostly everybody here is really familiar with the Evoke process, but we want to be able to extend this to people who are just jumping in for the first time. And I think that the structure that's laid out here is really helpful for people who aren't familiar with Evoke to be able to facilitate these conversations in an effective way. So that's going over the first meeting, and then we have the similar layout for the second meeting. And then just, again, end on a positive note that we are the change that we seek and encouraging people to participate. We also have sample invitation letters for those, you know, if somebody wants to just be able to click here and copy and paste an invitation and send it out to anybody who they think would be interested. We want to make it as easy for people as possible, as well as a sample letter to follow up afterwards. And then here at this Tell Us How It Went, this is something that Laura and I are excited about, because if you click here, it gives us the opportunity to, in an easy way, hopefully for the host, for them to be able to share their findings and, you know, share their experience with us. So again, name and location, places where if they take pictures of their charts, of participants, and they have permission to share those, they can share those files with us, as well as how many attendees and the top 10 values that come up during their conversation and a brief recap. And those top 10 values really come into play in this area of the website, which is our shared values. And this has been an evolving word cloud. And all of these terms have been taken from conversations that have already happened. And some of these are from, you know, some of your conversations who have already hosted, just sharing the terms that come up, and just to remind us that there's more that connects us than there are things that divide us. We have a little bit of information about George for those who aren't familiar with him, because we want him to be a big presence on this website. Oh, there's your book, George. So for people to become familiar with him. And inspiration. This is something new that Laura and I have been developing. George has been sharing a lot of resources that he finds really inspirational. This Jane Goodall video is great. I would encourage you all to watch it. It's really motivational. And these resources are similar to what George had mentioned earlier. All of these facts and figures type resources are going to be moving to a separate page, so that people have a quick place to go and just get facts to back up or to look further into anything that comes up in their conversations. So this will be evolving as we find more motivational or inspirational videos, articles, anything that we feel is really, you know, improving the world and pushing this movement forward. The blog. And this is actually an area where those of you who have already hosted, if you can share, even in just a few words, some of you already have your experiences from your meetings. This is where we really want to be featuring, you know, everyone who's participating, their findings. This is where people who input information into that field, that form that I had shown you earlier, we can then push that information through to the blog so that people can be following the progress of this in real time. And then here we have a pre-order link to George's book that'll be coming out March 4th. Laura, do you think that that's everything? Did I miss anything?
Yeah, that's an excellent summary. Thanks, Caitlin. And Joe brought up a great point as we were going through inspiration, and George mentioned resources, is that, you know, some of this does appear to be kind of a very America-centric. So as we have a global audience of conversationalists, we welcome you to share inspiration, share resources on studies, data, surveys, charts, everything that can go into this website so that it can really be an international site. Certainly, George mostly lives in America, so a lot of this is coming from that perspective at this point, but we really want this to be a global movement. And then Aaron just brought up, would it be possible to have a link on the website to be recorded in our listening exercise so that hosts have a guide on how to carry out the exercise of the conversation? That's fantastic. And that is something that was brought up during one of our earlier calls, and Kathy, George's wife, did an excellent summary of inner listening, but maybe we can get her to offer us a recording of her leading an inner listening exercise so that we all have that as an example. But yeah, great ideas. Keep them coming for us because, again, this is a project that we're here to help facilitate, but we also, it's not in any way limited by us. We really want all of the members of our global community to be contributing to it and that this continue to grow. So thank you everyone for being on this call and offering your suggestions just in these few moments.
Yes, thank you.
All right, George, back to you.
Okay, all right. Well, well, this has been a wonderful call. We want to have time for question and answer now, but I want to say before we go to question and answer, or additional comment as well, that we would love for each of you to host a Golden Civilization conversation. If you can see forward to March 4th and are willing to actually make a statement that you will give one during the spring, during that week of March 4th, or that you want to experiment with one before then, and then share with us so we learn from your experience, and we support you all. We will support you all the way. But we would love that, to be able to put that on the map that is on our website, that shows the conversations that have been committed to. We're aiming at a minimum of 40 to 100 conversations happening the first week in March. And we are well on our way to that. And if everyone who signed up for this call were to say, yes, I'm going to give one in that first week or those first few weeks, we'd be there. We'd have our first 40 already lined up and set up. So we would love your just letting Laura know or Caitlin know, or getting on the site and letting us know. These are private conversations, we're assuming, so that they're just people that you invite or friends of friends and all of that. But we would love that commitment. And the other thing is just to encourage those of you that have done a conversation already to go for the second one, and to let us know what happens as you move more toward action and to solving the obstacles. What are the exciting things you see? What are the values? How does the conversation shift? And also to begin to experiment, because we haven't done this a lot, experiment with asking people who would like to host a conversation. I'd love to support someone hosting a conversation, and also encouraging people to do multiple conversations. So I think that said, so this is a direct ask. Will you host a conversation? Please say yes. Raise your hand and say yes, whatever you can. Yay! All right. So let Laura know where that location is, so that we can put it on the map, which will be fantastic. And I know she'll be sending follow-up emails as well. Yep, great. Laura, anything else you want to add, or should we go to question and answer?
No, I think we have talked everyone's ear off, and so we welcome everyone's questions now.
Questions or comments? It's an open mic.
George, Clayton here.
Hey.
Actually, two potential questions. One being, is it advisable at all to do this? I know that the power is greatest if we're in person, but is it also possible to do this remotely via something like Zoom? Because I have in my world, a fairly far-flung group of people, and it could actually add some great leverage.
Absolutely, Clayton. I'm excited to hear that. Yeah, and I know you do. And we are about to experiment with that. We're going to do something in February and again something in March, looking at a modest-sized group and then quite a large group. I I've done a bit of it here with the group already, hosted a bit of something. I think it's doable, and it's just the more of us that try it, the more we'll figure out what the kinks are, what's going wrong, what the challenges are. And obviously, it's so much better to have the personal contact if we can. But you're right with Leverage. I have a community through Bright Talk that doesn't even have my video on it, but that has, I gave one Bright Talk webinar that had 2,200 people show up. So I'm eager to engage. And I think there were 15 countries. So I'm eager to engage and try it out. What could go wrong? I mean, at the very least, you're introducing an exciting concept to people and seeding the possibility, sending people to the website, seeding the possibility of them doing it locally.
Awesome.
Yeah, no, I think it's fantastic.
If I could add, the second thing is actually probably more of a statement than a question, and that is, and I think it falls again into the flavor of the evoke process and the training, and that is, as we create a conversation and then urge people who've engaged in the conversation with us to go out and be evangelists, right?
Right.
That we really take on a true mentorship role as the originator within our community, and take that role seriously. And I know from you and from Laura and from Caitlin, there's so much support there that I think that's the way things flow, and the energy gets passed on. When people feel supported, they feel empowered. And when they feel empowered, they're ready to run with it themselves and take those chances.
Beautiful, beautiful point, Clayton. We hadn't thought that through. We hadn't put that together. That makes total sense and really creates great community in that design. So we will give more thought to that and certainly encourage people to mentor in that way. And again, we will try to also provide great resources that are repeatable, videos that are recorded and people can go to as well. Fantastic, great, thank you. Great to see you and wonderful to reconnect. Somebody else, is there anybody else who'd like to share?
If I may?
Please, Louis.
I just want to highlight one thing, because we've been talking this session much about how to do a conversation like that, and the format of it, and even a bit of the reason. But what we will encounter is something that is in our nature, because human beings have lived in the way we do right now in houses, etc., not for much longer than 2,000 years, maybe 3,000 years for some, but that's about it. And before that, we were mainly organized in tribes, and usually small tribes. So it would be a couple of hundred people together. And in the strive to survive, people would also be focused on anything that would come in that would be alien, would be potentially dangerous, and would be something to to fight and to overcome. So we have a very biased nature in the way that when something new comes in, we very much tend to look at what is different, and then if something is different, we tend to feel that might be dangerous. So we have some kind of natural resistance to anything that we don't understand or feels different in any shape or form. And this is going to be true for your conversations as well. As people will come in from different tribes, if you will, then they are going to resist each other. So that is something to take into account. The art of this work is to help people to find what it is that combines us. that what it is that unites us, what it is that is so common in all of us. Because all people from all over the world, and I'm talking from experience as well, from doing life planning on so many places all over the world. You can see that life planning works everywhere. All those groups that we've done, all those 5 days that we do, they all come out the same. People are extremely enthusiastic about it, and they feel that they've learned something incredibly valuable. And that's just because it's all around the same values. So don't be too disturbed if you see that people are kind of resisting. That's in our nature. The beautiful thing would be to find all those elements that unite us. And that's the way that this is going to work as well. If this is going to be a movement, we need to emphasize everything that unites us and combines and that we have in common, not the things that are simply different strategies to get the same kind of values into our lives. Because that's the whole thing. People at one end of the political spectrum, and if you then compare them with the people on the other end, in the end they want the same thing. They want to live safely, to have food for their children, to have a great future for their grandchildren, and so it's that is all the same. So if we look at that, then I think that our conversations will become much easier.
Beautiful, wonderful, Louis, and it's so much evoke that he's speaking about, isn't it? I mean, it's the vision, that if we have a great vision, what can hold us back? And we've been going through this time where visions have gotten split in two, largely because what Louis talks about is strategies, and so we've gotten polarized. And so the beauty of this movement really is the evoke process, and always coming back to that common vision. Wonderful statement and reminder. We may have time for one more comment or question. Anybody?
Hi there.
Hello.
Hi there. Hi, everybody.
Yes, it sounds like Joss.
Yes, it is Joss.
All right.
Is my mic okay? Can you hear me?
Yeah, yes, we can.
Okay. What I wanted to say is, because I can imagine many people thinking or getting a little confused about it or a little scared about it, but it's, as we also mentioned in the mastery classes, the system is there, and people who meet us for the very first time and who get really into the conversations will be blown away. Even if you do not everything right to the book, even if you do have a feeling that you didn't get it completely right. So I would like, in that way, encourage everybody just to go ahead there and trust yourself. We know so much more, and we can do so much more than we think we can. Let me end it here.
Oh, I love you, Joss. Beautiful. Bravo. Wonderful. And that's really the truth. Go out and try it. It's just about, making that vision, and people will. Every time we've tried this, the end has been a fabulous and inspiring group experience. So please keep in touch. Let us know if you're going to do one before March 4th. Please get your name up, your flag on the map, so we can have our 40 to 100 community conversations listed. And watch this space. We're going to have much more developing and more conversations like this to make this really, really valuable. It's very heartwarming for me to see so many people that I know and love. Some of them I haven't seen in years, and come back into this space for these conversations. Thank you so much. Have a wonderful holiday. It's great to see the Christmas tree and Caitlin's picture, to know that we're also in a spiritual time and a time of giving. Much aloha to you all. Thank you so much.